If I were to define holding space in my own words, I would say that it is being unconditionally present with someone exactly as they are, and it's about creating a container for someone to express their full authenticity and validating that authenticity in a non judgmental way. Holding space is about witnessing someone and what they're sharing with you without trying to change anything about them or their situation. It requires managing resistance, really good listening skills, and a lot of unconditional presence. And because of all of these things, it's a skill that has deeply improved the quality of my relationships. I'd say that there are a few factors that get in the way of being able to properly hold space for others, but one of the biggest challenges that I've noticed is that we have a conditioning to avoid being with emotions that are seen as negative or bad. I do believe that this is changing, but overall, as a society, we have so many judgments around being uncomfortable or someone else being uncomfortable that we would go to very far lengths to avoid feeling anything but good. Instead of trying to avoid or resist any emotions that don't feel good, we also have an opportunity to be present with our full range of emotions and try and understand them and what they're teaching us about ourselves. It wasn't even until I was 21 years old that I ever learned how to hold space for myself because I thought that it was wrong to feel anything but positive. And I was afraid that if I felt anything but positive, the law of attraction would bring bad things into my life. Up until that point, I had only given myself permission to be with high vibrational feelings, and I had guilted myself for feeling anything less than because I was under the false impression that like attracts like with absolutely no nuance in between. Little did I know then that I was spiritually bypassing all of my emotions and subconsciously attracting what I was resisting from refusing to acknowledge my heavy emotions anyways. But that is a story for another time. By learning how to hold space for all aspects of myself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I not only deepen my ability to connect with myself, but I also deepen my capabilities to connect with others. Hi, do you want a bite? Number 1, offering unsolicited advice. As much as we think we have the answer to someone else's problem, I think it's a really good practice to withhold giving advice unless advice is asked from us. Instead of just assuming what the other person needs, something that can be really helpful is just asking them. Asking someone, what can I do right now to support you? Give them the opportunity to let you know. When we immediately go into fixing mode, it can unconsciously send the message to the other person that something's broken and that until they fix it, nothing's going to be okay. But when we're properly able to hold space for someone else, we send them the message that nothing has to change and I can still hold you and be there for you. Everything does not have to be perfect for it to be okay. And I got you. When we start throwing energy into other people's spaces with, you should do this, you should do that, or try and turn their story that they're sharing with us into a lesson, it can make things so much more overwhelming for them. Sometimes people aren't even looking for an answer. They just want to talk and they just want to be heard. Number 2, taking over the narrative and talking about yourself instead. This makes me want to do this. One of the most annoying and frustrating things for me is when I am trying to open up to someone and they dismiss me and invalidate how I'm feeling so that they can use what I'm sharing to talk about themselves. I want to preface this by saying that yes, I know that conversations should have, a flow of me sharing and you sharing. I also want there to be a balance in those conversations for all of us to feel really validated in what we're opening up about. Of course, not every conversation is going to have a perfect balance. Sometimes one person has more to share than the other, or one person needs more space to be held for them at a certain time. Overall, though, if I analyze a relationship and I don't feel like there's an equal exchange in energy over time, it's not really a relationship that I feel like is supportive for me. I'm fully aware that at the end of the day, the only person that will ever be able to fully validate me will be me. And at the same time, it is a preference of mine for the relationships in my life to be able to mirror that. So if you're not giving advice and you're not talking about yourself, If you're just holding space for another person, maybe you might feel awkward about just sitting there and listening and not really engaging back in the conversation. Sometimes we feel the need to speak up and say things and offer advice or talk about ourselves because we don't just want to be silent and we feel like we want to add something to the conversation. Something that's helped me a lot with fulfilling this need is just speaking affirmations to the person who is sharing. Saying things like, I hear you, I hear you. That's enough. Saying things like, I see you. Yeah, I hear that. Over time, I've tried to avoid saying I feel you because as someone who's really sensitive, I don't want to speak that into existence. Like, I don't want to feel what they're feeling. I want to respectfully support them from a distance. And so by just saying, I hear you, you are seen, you are heard. Everything that you're sharing is not falling on deaf ears. Like, I'm there. I think it's a really great way to engage with people without inserting yourself into it. It's a really beautiful thing to be able to look at someone and be able to say, I can never truly understand what you've been through. I thank you for sharing with me, and I'm here for you. It's just as simple as that. One thing that's been super helpful in my relationship has just been to affirm to the other person, I validate your feelings. This is especially helpful when we're getting heated in arguments. So all that's happening when we're arguing is we don't feel like the other person understands us. So when we do take a pause and we just say to each other, I validate your feelings, about 40% of the charge of the conversation drops because we're being told by the other person that even if I fully don't agree with what you're saying, even if I fully don't understand what you're feeling, I validate it. Because at the end of the day, most of us just want to feel understood and witnessed. Another thing I've learned about holding space for others is it really allows me to be there with someone without having to engage in that energy with them. So as someone, like I said, who's highly sensitive, trying to fix other people's problems can feel overwhelming for me as well. But when I'm able to hold space for them and fully just give them the reins but let them know that I'm there, my energy isn't in their field, their energy isn't in mine, and so I can just be respectfully viewing them and just being there with them and supporting them without having to feel into it. Holding space allows me to stay neutral and come at it from a neutral position instead of getting enmeshed in the energies or the charge of the emotions with the other person as well. When you're holding space, you're not diving into someone else's field. You're just setting up the container. And when you have a neutral container or you have a stable container, you have more availability to be there for the other person. Something awesome that I've learned about holding space is that when we can just observe someone and just be there for them and witness them without trying to fix them, we also send them the message that we fully believe in their capacity to overcome their own challenges. We believe in and trust in their own independence and have full support that they can do this. And if they do need our help, we'll be there for them. It is definitely not your job to hold space for everyone, always, or for anyone, all the time. And it is 100% never your job to be someone else's punching bag. I also don't think that it's fair to assume that other people are always going to be available for us. So something that's so corny, it's kind of cringy, but it's so helpful, is just asking the other person, do you have space right now for me to share? Do you have space? I like to start so many conversations like that, simply with, do you have space? I think it's a really wonderful way to acknowledge the other person, and it also kind of sets the tone for the conversation that's about to be had. So it gives people, time to drop down their grounding cord, prepare their nervous system, and be able to engage in a conversation in which maybe needs more attention. And it might also save you from potential disappointment of opening up to someone and them not being available to you, at least to let you know up front. Sometimes we're just at capacity and it doesn't feel appropriate to be there for someone else if we haven't first been there for ourselves. So it is really not your job to always hold space for someone else. Like I said, it's all about balance, baby, or maybe not even equal balance, but just feeling good about your relationships and feeling supported in your relationships. Anyways, this was a very short video and I definitely didn't cover everything about holding space. So if you have any questions or if you want to add anything, feel free to leave it down below. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Thank you for holding space for me as you watch this. Goodbye.